Hey Barry, if anything happens to me, my son will kill you. Get me out of here. Nne screamed as she banged on the door in a dark small room. She hit the door harder as she heard Ebere's laughter in the hallway. But Ebere only mocked her and walked away. Nne cried, believing that God was paying her back. She then remembered her past deeds. Mommy, don't worry. I'll bring her home to you. She's been busy with work, that's why. Fred said as he spoke with his mother one Friday morning. You worry a lot. How would I lie to you about having a woman in my life? He continued. Well, if there is a woman, prove it by bringing her to see me. Fred's mother replied, her voice firm with no room for argument. Fred sighed as he ended the call. That evening, he met with his friend Chukwuma at their favorite bar in Lekki. Why are mothers always on the neck of their sons like this? My mother never lets me breathe. Fred complained as he took a sip of his cold beer. Chukwuma laughed and shook his head. Guy, it's not just you. I can remember when my mother was always on my neck to get my own house and stop paying rent. Ha, for real? Fred asked, looking surprised. So real, man. She even started sending several real estate agents to my office, Chukwuma said, smiling. Wow, but that was a good push. I see why you were landlord so early, Fred admitted, looking at his friend. Well, guess what? She now wants me to marry the daughter of a billionaire client she's been trying to win for months now, Chukwuma said, rolling his eyes. Fred replied in disbelief. Just because I wanted to be friendly the other day, she hosted them at her place. She said the man told her I and his daughter looked good together. Can you imagine? Chukwuma said, gesturing wildly with his hands. They both laughed and sipped their drinks as they discussed other things. Fred was not just any man in Lagos. At 35, he had built multiple businesses across Nigeria. His import-export company had offices in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. As the first child among 4 siblings, Fred took his responsibilities seriously. He paid for his younger siblings' education and made sure his parents lived comfortably in their retirement. He is the ideal man every lady wants, but unfortunately, he was in a relationship with his love, Margaret. They had met 3 years ago at a business conference where Margaret was showcasing her beauty products. Margaret was beautiful, smart, and hardworking. Her beauty product and spa company had grown from a small shop in Enugu to 5 branches across the states. Fred, I have to travel to Italy next week, Margaret said one evening as they had dinner at Fred's house in Victoria Island. Again? We just came back from Dubai last month. Margaret reached across the table and took his hand. I know, baby, but I found this amazing supply of essential oils. If I can secure this deal, we can cut our production cost by almost 20%. Fred smiled and said, now to leave me go marry this your business remain. 3 years into their relationship, Fred proposed, but there was just one problem, Fred's mother. Between Margaret's travels and busy schedule, she hadn't found time to visit Fred's family home in Enugu. Fred knew he needed to arrange a meeting soon or his mother would never stop complaining. When Margaret returned from Italy, he told her it was time. Don't wear too much makeup, he advised. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Are you not ashamed of how I look? No, never, far from that. I love how you dress, but my mother may misunderstand. I just want your first meeting to go smoothly. Nne was sitting on the veranda, dressed in a wrapper and hair tie. Her eyes immediately assessing and scanning Margaret from head to toe. Margaret wore a simple but elegant dress. She carried a gift bag with items Fred had suggested. Good afternoon, ma, Margaret greeted, bowing slightly. So you are the famous Margaret, Nne said, her voice neither warm nor cold. Finally, you find the time to come and see us, common people. The visit was not pleasant. Nne asked Margaret multiple questions, while Margaret answered politely, but briefly. When they left hours later, Fred knew it hadn't gone well. Your mother hates me, Margaret said, as soon as they were in the car. No, she doesn't hate you. She just needs time to get to know you. The next morning, Fred called his mother. Mama, what do you think of Margaret? That girl. She's so proud, Nne declared. Did you see how she was dressed? All those expensive clothes just to visit an old woman like me. And she barely even talked. Is that how a good wife behaves? Mama, how can that be a problem? Margaret is not a talking type, and she's worse when she's around unfamiliar people. Just give her time, okay? No, I don't like her. She looks down on me. Look at how long it took her to come and see me. Look, Fred, I'm never wrong in my estimation of people. You may not see it now, but I can, Nne said, frowning. Over the next few months, he brought Margaret to visit his mother several more times, hoping Nne would warm up to her. But each visit ended the same way, with Nne finding fault with everything Margaret did or said. It went well, baby, Margaret said one evening as she talked with Fred in his house. But you don't sound okay, Fred replied, looking at her worriedly. That's because I'm not okay. Your mom is after my life. To help our relationship, I asked her to come to my spa so I can pamper her. But she shouted Holy Ghost fire at me and hung up. Fred was shocked. Baby, just delete that thing and ignore my mother. She will change. I hope so, Margaret said, looking worried. The following weekend, Fred and Chukwuma met at their usual bar to unwind. Chukwuma was in a bad mood. Man, we've lost our Abuja project, he announced as soon as he sat down. I'm sorry, Fred said, signaling the waiter for 2 beers. So, what are you going to do now? I don't know, Chukwuma admitted. We need a new project and fast. Well, speaking of problems, how's the situation with your mother and Margaret? Getting worse, my friend. My mother sent Margaret a threatening text message. I can't believe she would do that. Don't be surprised. Mothers can be scary, especially when they don't get their way, Chukwuma said, shaking his head. They were still talking when Chukwuma suddenly stiffened, his eyes fixed on something across the bar. What's wrong? Fred asked. Ha, guy, my mother don't show. I was looking around. Without another word, the two friends quickly paid their bill and slipped out through the back exit, laughing like schoolboys as they escaped. Fred was in his office on Wednesday, buried in paperwork for a new import license. He hadn't noticed the multiple missed calls from Margaret's number. He immediately started returning the call, but a strange voice received the call. He stood up alarmed as the stranger introduced himself as a doctor. What happened? Is she okay? Fred asked, worried. She's stable now, but she suffered some burns. Can you come to the hospital right away? The doctor replied. The next thing was at the hospital, being led to Margaret's room by a nurse. Can I see her now? Fred asked, and ran out as soon as the doctor nodded in affirmation. Margaret was awake but looked weak. Fred gripped her palm tightly as he couldn't hug her because of the burns. How did this happen? It's your mother, Margaret said as tears dropped from her eyes. Fred rubbed his head in shock, unable to believe his ears. Margaret was discharged that evening. Back at Fred's home, Margaret narrated how she was around his mother's neighborhood and decided to pay her a surprise visit. Thank God I went with Fumi, she said as she continued. Fumi was Margaret's assistant and friend. Margaret explained that she was happy when Nne smiled and welcomed her into the house. But before she could look up minutes later, Nne emptied a bowl of hot water on her. She screamed and ran out as Fumi helped her to the car and drove her to the hospital. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I never knew she would go this far, Fred said sadly as he held Margaret carefully. That night, after Margaret had fallen asleep with the help of painkillers, Fred called his mother. But she rather ended the call saying, Tell her to stay away from my house and my son, or next time will be worse. Fred was speechless. He hung up, his heart breaking. But from that day, he cut all communication with his mother. Back in Enugu, unknown to Fred, Nne had not given up on her fight against Margaret. One afternoon, she showed up at Margaret's office. So this is where you do your witchcraft, Nne said, looking around at the spa product with disgust. Margaret stood up, trying to appear calm. Good afternoon, Mommy. Who is your mother? Nne shouted, drawing the attention of customers in the lobby. You've turned my son against me with your evil charms. I've done no such thing, Ma, Margaret said, her voice low. I see that you've recovered from the burns of the last time, Ba. Alright. The next time we see each other, it won't be good for you, Nne warned as she stormed out of the premises, raining curses at the already sad and embarrassed Margaret. That evening, Margaret made a difficult decision. Fred, I can't do this anymore. I can't marry you. I can't be with you anymore, Margaret said, finally looking up with tears in her eyes. No, Margaret. You can't possibly be breaking up with me like that. I really do not want to, but I have to, for my safety and peace. We can't be together in peace with a mother like yours. But we can work this out, Fred pleaded. Despite all Fred's arguments and pleas, Margaret remained firm. A week later, she left for London. Fred knew she was really leaving to get away from the pain of their breakup. One sunny Saturday, Fred was at his friend Chukwuma's house for the naming ceremony of his first child. Congratulations, man, Fred said as he hugged Chukwuma. His friend looked tired but happy, his face glowing with the joy of new fatherhood. Please, be my excuse to hide away from all these guests. I don't know where and how my mom knows all these people, Chukwuma said, grabbing Fred's arm and dragging him behind a large house where there were fewer people. Well, have you tried dating again? Chukwuma asked. Fred took a sip of his drink. Actually, my mother has been trying to set me up with someone. You are joking, Chukwuma said, laughing. I'm not. Here's a picture. Her name is Ebere, Fred said as she showed Chukuma a photo on his phone. Chukuma whistled softly. But the girl fine, oh. So have you met her? Once. She's nice, smart, funny and successful. We've been texting and calling each other for about a month now. After 8 months of dating, Fred and Ebere told Nne about their engagement. She was beyond happy. Later, when Fred went to bid his mother farewell in her room, she grabbed his hands. Aren't you happy with this awesome gift I found you, eh? Go there to remove that other evil girl so that I can give you the best. You should be happier, she said, smiling broadly. Fred's face darkened. Mom, please, not today. Months passed and Ebere announced that she was pregnant. Fred was happy. Maybe a child would fill the emptiness he still felt inside. One day, while shopping at the mall, Fred saw Margaret standing in front of a bookstore, browsing through the display window. Margaret! He called. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. They hugged tightly and found a small cafe in the mall where they sat to catch up. Fred, we shouldn't be seeing each other like this. I swore that I have gotten over you, but seeing you now just proved me wrong, Mary confessed. It's the same for me too, Fred replied. 3 months later, Ebere gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Jerry. Nne came to stay with them for a few weeks to help with the baby since Ebere's mother was late. When Jerry turned 1, they organized a big birthday party for him. This boy doesn't look like either of you, said one of Fred's aunties, smiling at Jerry. Nne had just put Jerry to bed and was heading to the kitchen one day to prepare dinner when she heard voices. Quietly, she approached the kitchen doorway and peeped in. What she saw made her cover her mouth in shock. Ebere was in the kitchen with her brother Emeka in an intimate way. Nne couldn't contain her shock. What is this? She shouted, stepping into the kitchen. Ebere and Emeka jumped apart, their faces pale with fear and guilt. Mommy, it's not what you think, Ebere stammered, when Emeka was already rushing past Nne and out of the house. Not what I think, Nne said, her voice trembling with anger and disgust. I have eyes. You were kissing your own brother. Ha! In your husband's house. What kind of abomination is this? With a cry of rage, she grabbed a heavy pan from the stove and swung it at Nne's head. Panicking, Ebere dragged the unconscious Nne into a small dark warehouse at the back of the house. Hours later, Nne woke up with pains all over her body. Her head throbbed and she couldn't see anything in darkness. Help! She called weakly, then louder. Somebody help me! After hours of hitting the door without a response, she sat on the floor and cried as regrets filled her thoughts. She had brought this upon herself, she thought, and cried even more. She got more scared as she remembered Fred was away on a 2-week business trip to America. Mommy, how do you like your new home? Too bad you won't even say goodbye to your son before leaving us in peace, Ebere said, her voice cold and mocking. Well, I will tell you a secret. Jerry isn't even Fred's son. He's I and Emeka's son. But unfortunately, you'll be taking that truth to your grave. Meanwhile, something made Fred cut his trip short. He didn't call ahead, wanting to surprise Ebere and Jerry. But when he got home, he was surprised to see most of the lights off. Using his key, he entered quietly, thinking Ebere and Jerry might be asleep. The house was strangely silent. Fred went to the master bedroom, but the bed was empty and looked like he hadn't been slept in. Frowning, he checked Jerry's room, but the crib and closet was empty too. Ebere, he called, walking through the house. Mom, anybody home? There was no answer. Fred's unease grew into full-blown worry. He tried calling Ebere's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Just then, his phone beeped with a text message from an unknown number, stating that he should check the warehouse behind the house. Fred grabbed the flashlight and ran out to the small warehouse. Mom! He cried out in horror as he opened the door. Nne lay on the floor, barely conscious, her clothes dirty and her face pale with dehydration and hunger. After giving her some water and calling their family doctor, he ran to the kitchen and prepared a cup of tea. He tried calling the unknown number that sent the message, but it was now switched off. Nne finally woke up properly and took a few sips of the tea Fred had made. Mom, what happened? Fred asked gently. Where are Ebere and Jerry? Tears filled in his eyes. Oh, my son, I've done a terrible thing to you. All of this is my fault. Slowly and painfully, she told him everything. Fred staggered to a chair as he tried to make sense of everything. I'm so sorry, Fred, Nne sobbed. 1 year later, Fred and Margaret were married in a small, intimate ceremony on the beach in Lagos. At the reception, Fred stood and raised his glass for a toast, looking at his new bride with love shining in his eyes. "To happily ever after," he declared as the guests cheered and clapped.